This is Ask Governor Murphy, a co-production of WBGO, WNYC, and WHYY. I'm Nancy Solomon. Tonight we'll talk about the drought, wildfires, and the re-election of Donald Trump, and what it all means for our region. Listeners, call us with your questions for the governor at 844-745-8255. That's 844-745-8255. We'll also be reading your questions on social media using the hashtag AskGovMurphy. The number again, 844-745-8255. And we're joined now by Governor Phil Murphy. Good evening.
Good evening, Nancy. Good to be with you.
You are just back from London. Did people ask you what kind of a Mickey Mouse country do you live in?
I don't think we had one meeting that got through the first 10 seconds without questions about the election coming up, for sure.
Yeah. And what was the purpose of the trip?
Purpose of the trip was an economic mission. And I think this is our 9th or 10th country. New Jersey sells very well internationally. Our location, our airports, ports, diversity, international presence for a lot of multinationals to begin with, a state that's tolerant and open. So all those things are really helpful. I hope to do a few more of these before we leave, because we've produced the main core objective is jobs and investments. We also do higher ed memorandum of understanding. We do some political stuff as well. And obviously just after the election, people had a lot of questions, as they do back here as well.
What do you mean political stuff?
We'll meet ministers. I shouldn't say political, government to government stuff. So we spent an hour with the trade and investment minister, a guy named Jonathan Reynolds. The Labor government has just gotten elected a few months ago by a pretty substantial margin, and he's new to his job, and getting inside of his thinking is really helpful for us. Very productive trip.
And what companies did you meet with that might be coming here?
Yeah, so the big one that folks might know is Reckitt, which makes Lysol, among other things. Their North American headquarters are already here. I don't think I'm making any news, but they are like a lot of companies, particularly with the prospect of Trump tariffs. There are a lot of folks out there who want to make more stuff in the U.S. So I'm not a big tariff guy by any means, but if we get more stuff made in New Jersey as a result, that'll at least be a silver lining. We also met with a bunch of startups in both London and Cambridge. Cambridge has become probably the European hotbed for tech-related, health tech and tech-related startups. As you know, we're big in New Jersey into AI, bio, life sciences, also tech, telecom. So lots of interesting, good meetings. Those are much smaller, early stage companies, but with the ability to get big. I should say one of the other thing we did, which was the most moving part of our trip, we spent Veterans Day at the Cambridge American Cemetery, where over 3,800 of our GIs are buried, over 300 of whom are from New Jersey. We laid a wreath at the grave of Elmer Shin, who was a Monmouth County Army private. We participated in a really solemn service after that. And so we did a Veterans Day reception today at Drumthwack at the governor's mansion. But on the actual day, we were at this extraordinarily powerful, moving cemetery in service. So it was a action-packed trip, as these trips are, and I think very profound in the veteran sense and very productive in the New Jersey economic sense.
And you've had a busy day, your first day back, because I know you had a press conference today about the drought and the wildfires, and I wanted to talk about that. So we have pretty severe drought going on and wildfires in New Jersey and New York. So let's start there. What can you tell us about the water supply and what it means for people in this region? Yeah,
I mean, the one message I'd love to say to everybody, actually two messages. Number one, try to use less water, whatever you can do. And I don't want to sound like the nanny state, as they say, but a shorter shower is an obvious one. It's November, so normally you'd say don't water your grass, but that's kind of this is another piece of evidence as to climate change is real and around us. We've got a drought at the end of a year. So number one, use less. And number two, whatever you do, please God, don't light any fires outside. So push off the burn pit or the fire pit. If you smoke, find a smart, foolproof way to dispose. Campfires, this is not the time for campfires. The projection here is it's going to be, right now, the experts are saying a relatively dry winter that has benefits in some respects, not in this respect. So we raised with the Commissioner of the Department of Environmental Protection, who does an outstanding job, Sean LaTourette, we raised our sort of threat level from drought watch to drought warning. Frankly, it's got some very meaningful, if Sean were here, he would give you chapter and verses to the meaningful technical reasons and weapons that gives him and his team. But frankly, it gives us, I think, even more importantly, the opportunity to use our bully pulpit and say, this is serious. It's not going to end anytime soon. Use less water. Don't mess around with lighting anything. We'll see where it goes. We could crank it up one more level to a drought emergency. That there are certain benchmarks that you need to have in order to make that step. I sure as heck hope we don't get there. Part of the reason, in fact, to raise the warning is to increase our chances that we don't get there, that people actually use less and we don't have any challenges with fire. Nancy, I don't want to go on, but since October something, we've had 500 something fires, almost 550 fires. The comparable period a year ago was like 50. It's up 1,300%. I think our guys told me today. So this is real.
And are they mostly in the northwest corner of the state?
Yeah, they've been all over. So I was on with the mayor from Evesham this morning, which is down in Burlington County. Her fire, by the way, Jackie Vesey is the mayor. She does a great job. That fire is under control. West Milford, which is the one up north, is, it's beginning to get contained, but it's a challenge and it's cross-border. So we've got a great relationship with New York, and that's a good thing. What I did not know, and shame on me for not knowing, not every state has a state forest fire service. Our guys and gals are as good as there are anywhere you can find. New York does not have a state fire service. So we've got great relations with New York, and including the governor and I were back and forth yesterday. That's the good news. But in terms of, matching up counterparts, it's a little bit more challenging.
So who's fighting the fire on the New York side?
It's local and county. And by the way, our folks are so well regarded. This is not, to the best of my knowledge, this is not the case right now. They're in demand to go to other states. We have enough on our plate in New Jersey right now, so they're all, to the best of my knowledge, they're all inside of our four walls, and they've been doing an incredible, heroic job.
So I have a question about the ban on outdoor fires. Does that include propane gas grills? Big issue in the suburbs.
Yeah. I'm hoping Sean is listening and he's going to come in and tell me
Maybe he'll
whether it
text you.
does. I would not, when in doubt, don't go there. That's my current view. And the forecast is not, what do we have? A tiny bit of rain the other day, but not remotely enough to deal with this.
Yeah. I was hiking up near one of the big reservoirs, and you could see how low the water was. So
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's talk about the election. As a Democrat, you can't be too happy about the election results. There's been so much analysis and hand-wringing about what went wrong for Democrats. I don't want to go too deep into that because I feel like people have been chewing it over for the past week. But the New Jersey results were surprising, right? So let's start with those. I mean, why do you think Kamala Harris only won by 5 points? And why was that such a huge drop from Biden's 16-point lead over Trump in 2020?
Yeah, I'm not sure I've got the magical answer. I do think the loss was a summation of, I've come to this conclusion, I'm not sure I'm in the minority or not, a summation of 12 to 15 factors that none of which would have dictated the result, but they all went against us. And on that list, short runway, President Biden's approval ratings, right direction, wrong direction, Elon Musk with $1 gazillion, not maybe talking enough about the economy when that was the number one issue, Trump brilliantly playing identity politics cards like the trans card, immigration was played extremely effectively by them. Comments and positions that were taken by the vice president in prior elections, her, and I have to say laudable at one level, but I think she paid a big price for volitionally not separating herself from any of the Biden policies when she had the opportunity to. I think she largely ran a good campaign, I have to say, to her credit. You add up all of that, however, and every one of those things went against us. And the margin in New Jersey was 10 to 12 points less than it was in 2020. If you look at Illinois, New York, New Jersey, Maryland, California, all blue states, all had a drop-off in margin between 10 and 12 points, so not unique to New Jersey.
Right.
We won a lot of races down ballot. Andy won with 8 or 9, I believe, margin. Sue Altman lost. I don't think Sue could have won that given the top of the ticket performance, or put differently, if the top of the ticket did this year what they did in 2020, I think Sue had a real shot there. I was with her a lot at the end. But other than that, down ballot races, you don't win them all, but we won a lot. So one example, Trump won Passaic County, and yet we won all 3 commissioners' races and the sheriff's race, and they were all competitive.
Yeah.
So it's a kind of a crazy ballot. A lot of people stayed home.
Yeah. Well,
a lot of people stayed home.
Passaic County is interesting because it has so many Arab Americans.
Yeah, you've got that factor as well.
Gaza was certainly an issue. So I understand Donald Trump called you since the election. Tell us about that.
Did he tell you this?
Trump didn't tell me.
No, just checking.
I talk to him every day.
Exactly.
But yeah.
He reached out to me. Today is Wednesday, London, early evening Monday. I congratulated him. He reviewed he was very satisfied with, obviously he's in a good mood, very satisfied with the performance. He was to the vote. He knew what the margin was in New Jersey, by the way.
And he initiated this call. You didn't call them and say, hey, I want to talk to you.
I did not call him or his people.
Was it a little awkward?
No. I mean, listen, I said, we did a press event last week, and by the time I walk out of here, I will have had more years at that moment as governor alongside Donald Trump as president than any other governor in America who's a Democrat. So we've had to run this play before, as they say, and you have to do basically 2 things that seem at odds with each other. Number one, you have to fight like hell. And if you look at the 3 years that we overlapped with him in the first go around, we fought like hell to protect people's rights, certain communities, our interests as a state. And we're going to do that again. That's why we're here. My job is to protect the 9.5 million residents of this state. But at the same time, you have to be open and willing to find common ground. And in the first go round, we did on infrastructure, the Portal North Bridge, which will be finished next year. That's a topic. That's one of the things he and I talked about. He will come up, I'm virtually certain, when that opens. And he greenlit it, so he deserves to be there. And then more tragically, COVID, particularly the early days, which you and I have talked a lot about. Mm-hmm. And Dave was in the front row on so many of those briefings. Notwithstanding the awful loss of life, it would have been a lot worse had his administration, particularly that March, April, May, June timeframe, hadn't been there for us. So we got to, in the worst of possible circumstances, we got to know each other pretty well, and God willing, we'll be able to get that balance right again, that we're going to fight like hell on the stuff that we feel passionately about, our values, et cetera, and we're going to try to find common ground where we can.
I was surprised to hear that he asked you if you were going to come to the inauguration, like he wants you to.
Yeah,
Is he a little desperate about the crowd size?
Listen, I'm not. The last thing I'm going to do, particularly after some of the appointments he announced today, is to defend him. But the inauguration came up, and actually I brought it up, and I'll tell you why I did. And this is an important point for me. Tammy and I went to Joe Biden's inauguration, and we were struck by the amount of Republican governors who showed up there. And remember, that was literally 2 weeks after January 6th, and they were making a statement that whether we like what's happening or not, this is one country, and we're going to, by virtue of being there, we're going to make that statement. I think that same statement needs to be made on the other side. I don't like the result. I don't like a lot of these people he's putting forward. My God, how could you? But the fact of the matter is we're still the United States of America, and that's why we're going to be there.
Okay, we got calls coming in. People want to ask about the election results and discuss it with you. So we're going to go to that. But folks, if you want to talk to the governor, the number is 844-745-8255. We're going to take a call from Paul in Warren County.
Hey, Paul.
Hi, Governor. Hi, Nancy. So I had a question for if the Trump administration tries to use federal land inside New Jersey, like McGuire Dix, Lakehurst, or Picatinny Arsenal, or Earl Naval Weapons Station, if they try to use those types of facilities as a concentration camp for immigrants, what will the Murphy administration do? And as a follow-up to that, I guess, how might New Jersey residents legally help immigrants who get imprisoned in such camps inside New Jersey?
And it's not a crazy question. I mean, the Elizabeth Detention Center is a federally contracted detention center.
I mean, it's not a crazy question, but I can't believe that we're having the conversation. And Paul, I'm going to ask, I'm going to give you a quick sense of an answer, but I'm going to ask my general counsel, or chief counsel rather, Paramel Garg, to follow up. Natalie Hamilton is with me. Natalie, make sure you get that. Listen, we'll fight. I assume it's largely legal. We reviewed the first, the 3 years of experience we've had with the Trump administration, and we either were solo or participated in legal action that resulted in largely a 70-30 win percentage. So my gut tells me, Paul, the first levers we're going to be pulling will be legal. The bully pulpit will be part of that and using that aggressively, which is what we did the first go round. And then beyond that, I'm not sure I've got a crisp back end of an answer. What can regular folks like you and me do to help out? I assume there's going to be part of, I would think, the reality, if this comes to pass, I can't believe we're talking about it, but if it comes to pass, there's going to be an enormous amount of civil, I don't want to use the word uprising because I don't mean that is a violent matter, but there will be an enormous outcry, I would think, of folks who will just want to stand up and be heard. And I think being a part of that, whether that's protest marches, whether it's rallies, whether it's petitions online, money to causes like Make the Road, which is an outstanding organization. My guess is it's a little bit of all of that. And God, please God, cooler heads prevail and that this doesn't come to pass. But your point about the federal land, that there's a lot, I guess there's a lot we can do, but there's only so much we can do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, we're going to stick with the election results and, actually, we're going to take a break is what we're going to do.
I've also got an answer on your propane.
Do that. We got a few real seconds.
Quick from Sean. You can still use an elevated grill with propane under the drought warning. You can't start a wood or charcoal fire.
Okay.
So there you go.
Thank you. You're listening to Ask Governor Murphy. We're going to take a quick break and we will return momentarily.
And this is Ask Governor Murphy here on WNYC, and stay with us for On Point. That's coming up at 8 o'clock. It's 47 degrees right now. A coastal flood advisory kicks in overnight from 4 a.m. to 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. Could see some minor coastal flooding during that time. Tonight, mostly clear skies with a low of 38.
If it happens in New York, you'll hear about it on WNYC. Like this exciting party to celebrate our 100th birthday. We'll have an open bar and iconic New York City foods, dancing and a photo booth, a live DJ, and folks from your favorite programs. Ticket sales support WNYC and Gothamist at 9 p.m. Get your tickets today at wnyc.org/party.
WNYC supporters include the Guggenheim Museum, presenting Harmony and Dissonance. This exhibition of paintings in the Spiral Rotunda traces the vibrant abstract art movement of the early 20th century known as Orphism. On view now. Tickets at Guggenheim.org.
You're listening to Ask Governor Murphy, a co-production of WBGO, WNYC, and WHYY. Got a question for New Jersey's governor? Call us now at 844-745-8255. That's 844-745-TALK. Pose your question on Twitter or Facebook with the hashtag AskGovMurphy.
I'm Nancy Solomon, and we are live with Governor Phil Murphy, and we're going to take a question from social. We have WHYY and WBGO reporter David Mathau with us. Dave, what have you got?
The David Mathau.
Well, thank you. I'll take that as a compliment, Governor. Yes, we do have a question from Lisa from Cherry Hill, emailed in to you, Governor. Lisa wants to know, what are your plans, and we've just discussed this a little bit, to protect immigrants as well as the LGBTQ community and access to all health care in New Jersey, including contraception and abortion and mental health services against, quote, these are her words, the incoming fascist Trump administration?
Yeah, Lisa, again, a good, very good question. I hope she's listening. Natalie, let's get Dennis Eveloff, our head of policy, to follow up with Lisa, if you could. And again, we try to do these follow-ups within the first 24 hours that follow. Probably a similar playbook to my prior answer on abortion, reproductive freedoms, contraception. We have got some of the strongest statutes on the books of any state in America, so that's probably a good place to start. We also, I think, have done as much as any state in America to defend the rights of the trans community in particular within the LGBTQIA plus umbrella communities. I think we owe it to ourselves to look at all of that in November, anticipating what we might be dealing with in January. I would think it is also a similar playbook in terms of legal action. Again, when you've got statute, that's a good place to start. You've got a good foundation, but legal action, bully pulpit, I think people are going to have to be engaged, non-violently, obviously, but people are going to have to be engaged. And if you believe everything that's being said on the campaign trail, and you look at some of the appointments that he's proposing, we need to get over the question of whether or not this might happen. As tragic and as heartbroken as we might be that this is America and this could happen, that this really could happen, and we can't be sitting on our hands. We've got to preemptively figure out what that looks like. And it's, if you look at the rhetoric, it's vulnerable communities that are going to be in the crosshairs. You know, the trans community, I'm sure, more broadly, the what I call the pride communities, the immigrant brothers and sisters newly arrived, never mind all of the foreign policy, tariff, another spaghetti that we're going to have to deal with. It looks like it looks to me, based on the team he's assembling, the rumors of executive orders on day one, that the first moves are going to be, I would say, deportation feels like it's going to be at the top of the batting order.
Yep. What do you make of where things stand with wind power? Because those wind farms are in federal waters. Yep. The first one was officially approved, about a month ago? Yeah. Are you going to be able to get that program out ahead of him, or out ahead of President-elect Donald Trump, or are we going to lose the possibility of wind power to this administration?
The answer is, I hope we can. It's probably, in terms of, I'm putting aside human beings like mass deportation for a moment, or defending the trans community's rights, is a more abstract policy set. This is the one that's probably the trickiest, given it's a ridiculous bridge that's been built between smart, sensible energy policy that allows us to not have to import energy, but make us an export state, union jobs, construction jobs, clean energy in the most densely populated American state. It checks so many boxes, and yet it's gotten this woke label, which is ridiculous, but that's the reality, which is why this one is going to be, I think, the trickiest area. We've come a long way. This has real momentum. We'll see. This is probably the trickiest policy area that we've got, but I remain an eternal optimist, including on this.
Well, during the campaign, Trump promised the oil and gas industry that he would have, look out for their interests if they donated to his campaign. And it's the oil and gas industry, as you know, that's been behind, all the promulgation of ideas that this is, going to kill whales, or it's going to wreck your view if you live at the shore. Yeah,
all of that. That's so fossil fuel money's been behind all of that. Yeah. Even Exxon, though, is saying that they're hoping President Trump stays in the Paris climate accords because if they could do more from the inside than from the outside. So, but I'm not naive enough to think that this won't be a battle. There's a lot of big capitalist firms that Donald Trump ought to have a lot of regard for, like Blackstone and Invenergy and Total Energy and Shell and others that are hugely invested in offshore wind. And these are not naive, do-gooder nonprofit entities. They're cold-blooded capitalists.
Tom Kean Jr. is invested in wind.
Is that true?
I believe I saw an article about this the last week before the election or so.
So there you go. But I hope the president sees that this is not a granola, quote unquote, endeavor just because we want to look like we're woke. This is cold-blooded capitalism and its smart energy policy for America.
All right, let's go to the phones. We have Craig from New York on the line. Hi, Craig.
Hey, Craig.
Hi. Hi, Governor Murphy. Thanks so much for taking the time. I just want to start by saying I'm a professional demographer who analyzes population statistics of the United States. And I'd like to address the drop in New Jersey voting and start by saying that many New Jersey residents did not feel safe voting. About 4 out of 5 New Jersey residents said violence is likely after the election, according to NJ.com. And this is really the heart of my concern. The threat of violence, whether real or imagined, appears to have had a significant effect and discouraged people in New Jersey from actually going out to vote. But I think what's equally important to note is that Trump made no gains in New Jersey, no additional voters. The same number that voted for him this time was the same as last time. No gains, no surge, no wave. The drop for Harris, however, was radical and unexplainable under normal circumstances. But I think the circumstances, as we can tell, were not normal. As mentioned, 4 out of 5 New Jersey residents said violence was likely as a result of the election. So I'm led to conclude that fear-mongering created by Trump seems to have had its intended effect of discouraging voter turnout in the New Jersey electorate. And I imagine under these circumstances, the election was not necessarily free or unimpaired, which is a right that's guaranteed to all Americans. And And I believe this needs to be further investigated. I certainly hope you do as well. And perhaps even saying that this election perhaps should be deemed invalid, perhaps formally charging Donald Trump with subverting American law by taking away the rights of millions of Americans to have a free and fair election in 2024.
Okay, Craig, let's get an answer to your question, because I was unaware of threats and problems of that kind.
Yeah.
Anything that rose up to you at your level?
So, Craig, I'm going to ask the lieutenant governor, who I rarely bother because she's extraordinary and she's incredibly busy, but she oversees elections. I'm going to ask her to, either she or one of her senior people, to give you a shout. The Donald Trump didn't do much better or any better than last time, and there was a big drop off in Democratic voters. Put the reason aside from it, that's America. That's what happened. Trump basically got what he got in 20, and Kamala got they're still counting out west, but 8 to 10 million fewer votes. And New Jersey is no exception to that. By the way, it's very rare out-of-state callers. So I got to give Craig a benefit from calling into a Jersey show. We'll follow up with you. I don't think sadly, I don't think there's any way to prove that. There were, in fact, I'm not aware of any incidents, and Tahisha should weigh in, and she will with Craig if she sees this differently, any incidents at all at polling places. I believe that the violence, that question, was asked as a result of the election, with January 6th in the back of everyone's mind. Frankly, a lot of folks, including yours truly, thought this was going to be really close, but we were going to win. In a really close election where we win, the other guys have proven in 2020 that they weren't going to take no for an answer. I believe that's what will there be violence, as opposed to I'm too afraid to show up at my polling place. We had record early in-person voting. We did have massive vote by mail. And then we had big results on game day. I should say one other thing. The turnout in 2020 really was an anomaly. In New Jersey, it was an all-time record. It was an all vote by mail election. Mm-hmm. If you look at turnout in 2012, 16, 20, and 24, a pretty straight line goes through modest increase in number of votes, 2012, 16, and 24. The outlier is 2020. Again, I'm not happy about it. People sitting at home. I can't believe you'd sit at home thinking that your vote didn't matter, given the stark differences between these two candidates and two visions for America. But a lot of people stayed at home and sat in their hands.
Okay, we're going to take one more call on the election, and then we will move on. Mary in Newark is on the line. Hi, Mary.
Hey, Mary.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep. I can.
Oh, great. Thanks for taking my question. So, two questions. The first question is, thank you, first of all, Governor, for having the show. So, President-elect formerly had an executive order that, in effect, was banning like DE&I initiatives and called it like anti-American, sex stereotyping, divisive kinds of things. Fortunately, and the companies were concerned and would have to work on their diversity, equity, inclusion activities because of that initiative. But then when he lost, since Biden reversed it, it was fine. The question is, if that executive order happens again, what would, and how would New Jersey manage that as far as companies and schools, as far as teaching, as far as inclusivity across the realm? And then the other question is regarding the books. If, like how in Florida, banning certain books in education, and how they're going to let the education be managed by the states. But if that kind of limitation occurs, how will New Jersey guarantee that or try to support educating the New Jersey residents equally, fairly, and not selectively? That's my question.
All good questions. On this one, I'm gonna ask Kate McDonald, who is our incoming chief counsel, to follow up with you, Mary. But we'll fight everything you just talked about. There's a great anti-book banning bill that Senator Andrew Zwicker's championed, which we are huge supporters of. You may remember that I stood with Ras Baraka a couple of years ago when Florida was defanging the AP African American study programs, pushing enormous pressure on the College Board to defang the African American studies element of their requirements, and we pushed back 180 degrees against that. This DEI obsession, again, it's probably not the same as sucking offshore wind into the woke discussion, but come on, man. I mean, we're the most diverse state in the nation. We wear that as a badge of honor. Equity is incredibly important to us. Inclusion, to make sure everybody feels like they're at the table. Those are American ideals. That's not radical in any way, shape, or form. The fact that we want to get rid of that or ban books, that's radical. That's what we have to push back on, and I promise you, we will fight tooth and nail.
Thanks for your call, Mary. So let's move on to some other topics. Sources tell WNYC that Governor Kathy Hochul will announce a plan tomorrow to relaunch congestion pricing with a $9 daily toll for vehicles. That's down from $15. You opposed the previous plan when it was at $15 and sued to halt the program. So will you now support congestion pricing at this low, new improved, lower price?
I feel like it's a Ginsu knife commercial, but wait, we're going to drop this by 40%. Listen, I can't for the life of me figure out, coming out of last week's election with those competitive House races in and around New York City, so the suburbs, and where voters, I think, screamed out that economic matters, affordability, kitchen table issues were really important, and they felt like they weren't being addressed and that they were lost as a result. I just don't know what, I don't understand why you play that card. I just don't get it. And I've got a great relationship with the governor. So we do a lot together, including fighting fires. I could give you the whole list of areas that we've got a great relationship. This is one that we're just not there. And we weren't there before last week. By the way, it's still in court. We're still awaiting a judgment.
Is there a price at which it becomes palatable?
I've always said that if the timing were right, that the freight was reasonable, and that Jersey benefited in some way, and that the pollution just wasn't displaced. I mean, we've got the strongest environmental record of any state in America over the past 7 years. You folks out there may not like everything we've done, but if this were baseball, our batting average is as high as anybody. But congestion pricing implies, by the way, I was just in London. It's the one big city in the world with congestion pricing. We almost walked on several occasions and or took the tube on several occasions. It hasn't done a thing to traffic. But this would displace the pollution to North Jersey. So, okay, wait a minute. We're paying more money.
The research has shown that it has improved traffic in London. I mean, obviously, you could get a bad day here and there, but... Or
5 in a row in my case, but including the weekend.
My understanding is traffic has improved in London.
No, I think the world of you, but you and I are going to part. Don't bring up the line just because we've now argued about congestion pricing. But back to this. You're charging us more. We're getting none of the money. The pollution's getting displaced over to our side of the Hudson. And by the way, I mentioned timing. My predecessor, bless his heart, canceled what is now the Gateway Hudson Tunnel project. That would have been open several years ago. So if our commuters had, one-seat train rides that were viable and that were, or the Port Authority bus terminal, which we're finally getting going. So we're going to continue to fight this, and maybe timing, maybe a fair deal at some point. We're not unreasonable people, but I just don't see it.
So the lawsuit will go forward?
It has gone forward. So it's still, the judge has not made his decision. So we shall see.
You're listening to Ask Governor Murphy, and we will be right back after this short break. I'm Nancy Solomon. We'll be right back.
November's Get Lit Book Club selection from WNYC and the New York Public Library is the novel Long Island Compromise by Taffy Brodesser-Akner. It's about the wealthy Fletcher family coping with the aftermath of a kidnapping. New Yorkers can borrow an ebook from the New York Public Library. Then join me, Allison Stewart, and Taffy to discuss the book at the December 4th live in-person and streaming event. Find details at wnyc.org/getlit.
Support for WNYC comes from the Morgan Library and Museum. Now on view in New York City, the new exhibition Belle DaCosta Green, A Librarian's Legacy, the true story of the woman behind J.P. Morgan's private library. More information at themorgan.org.
Peter Sagal here to celebrate the New York holiday tradition that goes back to the Gilded Age, Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me at Carnegie Hall. We'll be there on December 12th with panelists Paula Poundstone, Mo Rocca, and Joyelle Nicole Johnson. Tickets are at nprpresents.org.
You're listening to Ask Governor Murphy, a co-production of WBGO, WNYC, and WHYY. Got a question for New Jersey's governor? Call us now at 844-745-8255. That's 844-745-TALK. Or pose your question on Twitter or Facebook with the hashtag AskGovMurphy.
I'm Nancy Solomon, and we are live with Governor Phil Murphy. So the state's largest newspaper, the Newark Star-Ledger, announced it's going to stop printing the paper in February.
Yep.
It'll only offer an online edition. The Jersey Journal is completely closing down. That's a Jersey City newspaper.
Because it's printed at the Ledger's factory, right?
Yeah, and for all the other pressures that are on the newspaper industry. The Star-Ledger op-ed staff is being laid off, including Tom Moran, longtime and important member of the New Jersey Press Corps.
Big supporter of mine.
I have a short clip to play of the time that Tom Moran asked then Governor Chris Christie whether his confrontational tone was hurting his ability to work with the legislature.
You know, Tom, you must be the thinnest skinned guy in America, because you think that's a confrontational tone. Then, you should really see me when I'm pissed.
It's one of my favorite Chris Christie, and there's a lot of good Chris Christie tape, but that's really a good one. So are you concerned about the loss of the Star-Ledger, for the impact that it would have not having that printed paper for the state?
Yeah, I am. I said this when I first heard it. I think it's a big loss. And the fourth estate is diminishing when it should be expanding. And listen, part of this connects to last week. A lot of people are getting their news sources from
Joe Rogan.
Joe Rogan or some other TikTok or something where there's not primary research being done, not real journalists like you two. And by the way, I'm not in love with the Star-Ledger, by the way. Their reporting side, for the most part, not entirely, but for the most part, has called balls and strikes with us. I think they've been fair. I was on with Brent Johnson the other day, a guy I have a lot of regard for, and he's not alone. They've had their moments, but for, the editorial page, it's a different story.
I don't always agree with Tom, and I understand that he's a thorn in your side, but just the fact that he is a thorn in your side is important.
Yeah, I'm not a fan, but that's a separate point. But how do I feel about whether this is a good or bad thing? This is a bad thing. Mm-hmm. Whether I agree with them or not, it is a bad thing. And we need more and not less. And yeah, if that means I take more arrows, then you know what? I'm not, it doesn't get me jazzed, but that's the price I'm willing to pay. We all need to be able to pay that price. A big thing coming out of this is, what are they going to do about these legal notices?
Yeah.
That's to be determined.
Right.
That model is antiquated. That needed to get looked at and refreshed. And we're gonna try to get our arms around that.
And to explain, legal notices are public notices of government meetings, elected body meetings, or actions that are going to be taken. And there's a requirement that those meetings be advertised. And it's unclear. The Star Ledger was one of the main newspapers for those legal ads, so it's very unclear.
Was the main newspaper. Yes. And that system, by the way, needed to get looked at regardless of the Ledger's life or not. And we're going to try to sit with stakeholders and try to figure out a 21st century approach to that. But this is bad. Notwithstanding, what impacts on me and what people think about me, this is bad, not good.
Okay, let's take a question from social. We have David Mathau here with us.
David Mathau.
Governor, I believe that you are an animal lover, so this probably is a question that is important to take a look at. We got several emails on this. Danielle from Hamilton is asking you, Governor, New Jersey is facing its worst crisis ever in companion animal overpopulation. Shelters are overcrowded. They're euthanizing adoptable dogs. Municipalities lack impoundment facilities for strays. There are more bite cases. Abused animal cases are up. Why has the Domestic Companion Animal Council legally mandated to address and make recommendations in these kinds of situations, not convened since 2015?
Let me, has been my...
Wait, you mean you are not up on the dog control commission?
Easy now. As I have been...
It's a good thing you're not running for re-election.
Exactly. Since day one, I've had a deal with both of you in different venues and all members of the press. If I don't have a good answer, I'm not going to try to convince you that I do. So I'm going to have to get, first of all, I am an animal lover. We've got 2 dogs and a goldfish at this point. We're down a dog, but.
And I almost tripped over a cat coming in here, I got to tell you.
Yeah, those are not mine. I don't know where they come from.
Okay.
But ironically, I just had a conversation with some senior leadership in the legislature last night, not specific to the question that, is it Danielle? Danielle. Asked, but listen, we owe it to be humane. So I don't have a good answer. I think I'm going to ask Dennis again, Dennis Seveloff, to give Danielle a ring tomorrow, and we'll try to figure out what the facts are. That's based on that description, not a point of pride for us. So let's try to figure this out.
Okay, let's take a call. We have Steve from Bridgewater on the line.
Hello, Steve.
How you doing, guys? Hello.
Good.
My question is in relation to the current housing crisis. It may be low-hanging fruit, but the New Jersey State Mansion Tax, given the fact that it's set at $1 million currently, given the fact that housing prices have jumped up to $300,000, not really a mansion at $1 million anymore. Anything out there to amend that? Excuse me.
Steve, good question. First time I've been asked. I will ask our team to follow up with you. I'm going to have Eric Brophy do that in this case, Natalie. And we continue to have, so period. Hadn't thought about that. Let's get a conversation with you and see where that goes. There is no question we continue to have an extraordinary supply-demand imbalance in housing, and inflation, interest rates, supply chain, COVID, post-COVID, one thing after another. I look every month at the median sales price, number of units for sale, percentage of ask, year over year. How was it in October of 24 versus October 23? Every single month, those metrics have either stayed the same or gone up. Pricing, et cetera. Days on the market down, percentage of ask higher than 100%. It's why we're doing a ton on affordable housing, and we'll run through the tape doing that. And it's also a little bit of a sign that people want to be here. They really do buy that this is the best place in America to raise a family. And so particularly single family homes for young families, they continue to fly off the shelf, no matter what the interest rate. It's crazy. So Steve, we'll follow up with you, but the fact of the matter is we're light units, not just in affordable housing, we're light units, period. And again, that's partly a statement, a good thing. It's partly a statement about our popularity, but it's also, I think, unsustainable. And we got to build more, and we're working our tail off to do just that.
Okay, I'm trying to squeeze as many calls in as we can get. We've got another one from Tom in Princeton.
Hey, Tom.
Yes, good evening. I appreciate you accepting my call. I'm also concerned about the homeless situation and the lack of housing. The state's fight to enhance the number of available affordable houses, and that affordable housing throughout the state is, to put it charitably, a farce. The Burlington County Board of Social Services, in particular, prides itself on withholding constructive information and advice and effective assistance, assisting people to find timely and in a timely manner affordable housing. The County of Burlington has it's recently published 1,006 individuals. It's a gross undercount. I know of many people living in tents behind Walmarts and WWYs that are well beyond the reach of any state count or even private count from professional organizations. There is no Bill of Rights that the homeless have when they are given inaccurate or information, or they're abused, psychologically abused by any number of employees at the Burlington County Board of Social Services, and I'd imagine other social service organizations throughout the state. There's no Bill of Rights. They don't know how to complain. They don't know who to complain to. The county commissioners used to be in charge and have supervisory capacity and a say over how social services, the county social services organizations work. They no longer do. And that's been transferred to the state. And half the people in your office there, Governor, with whom I've spoken, legislative assistants and constituent representatives or liaisons that you have, transfer us to telephone lines in the Department of Community Affairs, I believe it's called, that rings in perpetuity. And as a person who ended up on the Section 8 wait list, that was January through February, that registration. In 2023, I've never received a postcard, a letter, a call, a knock on the door, not even a smoke signal, no guidance whatsoever. The social services offices do not provide any kind of tutorial on how to conduct a time and cost-effective search. I know that.
So Tom, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we need to get. So is your question, okay, what can the state do to reach out to people? Go ahead.
Well, the state is obviously out to lunch, to put it charitably, on the subject, and it's done remarkably little.
Tom. Okay, let me give me a chance to say something back to you. First of all, Tom, I'm not arguing with anything you've said, because I don't have, you obviously are living this, and in particular, it sounds like in Burlington County. But I'm going to ask Rob Field on our team to call you within the next 24 hours and try to figure out. We're all ears. If we can make this better, we're committed to doing just that. We've done a lot for homeless folks. We've done a lot for affordable housing, and those are related but very different initiatives in terms of the normal target audience. But we care deeply about this. And as I say, we've done a lot. It sounds like your experience has not been good, which I don't doubt. And I respect your experience, but I wouldn't call what we do a farce. I would say that I would bet you, without knowing it, because I don't know what the metric would be, but I'll bet you we're among the most progressive, aggressive states on this front in the United States. But I'm going to get Rob to follow up. And again, we're all ears. And if we can get better, I promise you we'll do everything we can.
Okay. At the risk of running out of time, we're going to take a quick question from Ann in Lawrenceville. Ann, I'm going to ask you to get right to your question, please, because we're almost out of time.
Yeah, well, thanks for taking my call, Governor Murphy. I know when you take these calls, you often say that you're going to have somebody from your staff get back to the person. And I guess this question is when you've got a new staff member. My question relates to a part of New Jersey Transit, which is called Access Link, the paratransit.
Yep.
My husband is a regular user of that. And on the one hand, it's wonderful because for his daily attendance at his programs, I don't need to drive him every day. But there's so many glitches. There's several times in the past 2 weeks where I've had to drive him because I've been unable to schedule a ride at the appropriate time and things like that. So it is severely under-resourced and lots of problems.
Okay.
So that, I know there's the trains and buses, regular buses have lots of problems, but Access Link also needs some attention.
And I appreciate it. I'm going to ask not just any staffer, I will ask Kevin Corbett, who is the Chief Executive Officer of NJ Transit, to call you tomorrow. Obviously, it's not a perfect organization by a long shot, but it has made enormous strides over the past 7 years. And I'll leave it to Kevin to follow up with you. And God bless you and your husband. Hang in there.
Well, and Karen Yee, a reporter for WNYC, did a bunch of reporting about 2 years ago, maybe a year and a half ago, about Access Link and all the problems people suffer through with it, waiting to get picked up. And so there's been a lot of problems. It doesn't get the kind of attention, obviously, that
the core bus and train business does.
Yeah.
Listen, it's gotten better. Like everything else in NJ Transit, it was a complete train wreck, no pun intended, when we first got here. And we've made a lot of progress, but that does not mean it's perfect. And if there's something we can do to make it better, we're all ears.
Okay, last question. The Cannabis Regulatory Commission is considering raising the social equity excise fee. That's the $1.25 per ounce tax on cannabis that goes towards funding things to fix the effects from the war on drugs in poor communities. Social justice groups want the state to charge $30 an ounce. It's a pretty big raise from $1.25. The cannabis industry is against it. Consumers aren't too happy about it. The decision has now been delayed. It was going to be made at the end of October. Didn't happen.
I think punted is a better word than delayed.
So what do you think? How much should be taxed to help pay for these programs?
There are several annoying elements of this, one of which is this has been part of the deal since the day I signed the law. This is not a new thing that just came up. And the point is for folks out there, it's not without risk. So I want to say that. For folks out there who may not be paying attention, the deal was as the price continued to drop as we expected it would in the legal market, then the taxes would go up and all the monies would get put toward, colloquially, the fallout from the war on drugs into underserved communities. That still should be the case, in my humble opinion. And by the way, if it dropped further, then there'd be a further adjustment to the tax. I still think it's a good idea. Having said that, there's a real black market reality, which is with us still. And so you should be willing to pay a premium in the legitimate legal market because you know that it's been tested, it's legal, you're not going to die. We just got to get that balance right. I'd like to see a lot more enforcement. Not a lot of enforcement right now on the streets, and I think that's a mistake. And I think that in combination with getting the money for the social equity stuff, I think is a good result.
You've been listening to Ask Governor Murphy, a co-production of WBGO, WHYY, and WNYC. Many thanks to our social media reporter, David Mathau, with help from Joseph Capriglione, Luke Green, Jason Isaac, Juliana Fonda, and Wayne Schulmeister. The show is directed by Doug Doyle. I'm Nancy Solomon. Thanks so much for listening. This is Ask Governor Murphy.
Is supported by NYU Skirball, presenting